The hijab controversy has reached the Supreme Court that is expected now to hear the case after the holy vacations. Girls who were stopped from entering an examination hall in Karnataka in December last have been fighting for their rights since. After an adverse Karnataka High Court ruling, the students have approached the apex court. Can we be denied our right to education just because we wear a headscarf is really the essence of the argument. The Supreme Court is likely to give the case a priority hearing as it is linked to examinations and the future of young women students who happen to be Muslims and hence in the eye of the storm.
So welcome to another edition of Off Limits. Our guest this week is Sanjay Hegde, well-known lawyer, senior advocate, and someone who's taken up so many cases that we keep reading about. The latest is on the hijab ban. Welcome to Off Limits, Mr. Hegde. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you, Seema. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the controversial subject of hijab. And you had represented one of the girls, right?
Absolutely.
But then suddenly you disappeared somewhere in the middle of it all. What happened?
Well, a senior advocate is a creature of the brief. That is, there is another advocate who handles the brief and says that, can you come for this hearing or another hearing? And if the advocate who's handling the brief says, no, tomorrow don't come, then the senior advocate has no other role. So I was told that after a couple of days that somebody else would be addressing the court and that I was requested not to come. Of course, it was surprising, but that's how.
Well, that happens. But what I wanted to ask you was that we had noticed from whatever little driblets we got in the media is that you were handling it on constitutional administrative law issues, right? The whole issue. And suddenly it became all about religion. Now, were you a little disappointed whether hijab is allowed in the religion or not allowed in religion? Is that the way to take this forward? And I'm talking on not on the judgment so much as on the defense.
No, see, it was an issue which rose directly from the facts of the case.
Right.
But in constitutional adjudication, there is also a principle called the Ashwander principle, which says that if you can decide a matter on narrower grounds, then you do not go into the broader constitutional issue.
Right.
So there was a narrower ground which was available. It was pointed out to the court. I told the court, look, first look in the statute itself, the Karnataka Education Act. Is there any specific section there which empowers the state to prescribe uniforms and also to prescribe punishments for those who do not wear the uniform or who add to the uniform or detract from it?
Right.
There is no such specific provision for uniforms anywhere in the Act. There were certain rules and regulations made, but the normal law is that you cannot make rules or regulations far beyond the Act. The court has chosen to deal with that argument by saying that, no, the rules are there, the rules are not contrary to the Act, and the purposes of the Act, the broader purpose is education. And along with education, there is also the question of maintaining discipline. The uniform is a method of ensuring that everybody is on the same page, everybody is, wears the same kind of clothes, and it has upheld the rules, implicitly upheld the rules.
Right.
And that's where it is located, the power. I do not think that this exercise is right. I do suspect that the Supreme Court will look deep and hard at that issue.
Right.
And for all you know, the Supreme Court may very well say that the entire issue could have been avoided altogether.
Right. And it could have. I mean, you know, it's something that happened right before the exams for whatever we could gauge for different reasons. But, you know...
And just 1 minute, Seema. Yeah. You see, this was these events happened around December 2021. By February, the matter was in court. And now by March, you have a judgment. well, things have moved very speedily. I'm not complaining about it, but normally that is not the speed at which constitutional issues are decided or cogitated upon, especially when matters are decided in the heat of the moment.
Yes.
Sometimes there are lots of, I won't say pressures, but influences that come in.
Right.
A cool, rational, dispassionate forensic analysis may not always be possible.
Right. So you have moved this, you went to the Supreme Court right now. So are you representing some, how does this work now? That you went to the court, the court has said that they'll take it up after the vacations.
Yes, so see, everybody who's filed a special leave petition, normally the special leave petitions come up after some point of time. Here, since there was urgency with regard to the exams, it was mentioned to the judges, and particularly because the next 3-4 days are holidays and we do not reopen before Monday, the attempt was to have the earliest possible hearing. The Chief Justice said that, give me time, let me look at it. He also did not possibly want to be rushed into hearing the matter. But I do expect that immediately after Holi, soon after Holi, we will have a hearing, at least insofar as the interim orders are concerned.
Okay, so hopefully they will not lose a year, but we have to see what happens with that. But you know, this whole thing about dress and the uniform, of course, you've already said that you are arguing it in a slightly different manner, but let's go to schools where uniforms are stipulated and where we heard in France, etc., that the hijab is not being allowed. Now, it's a pretty fine line, right? If you're sending your child to a school with a uniform and a stipulated uniform, and then you add to it, how would the law see it? Very strictly or very compassionately to be able to sort of get over this hurdle?
That's exactly the point. That was one of the arguments.
Okay.
That there should be reasonable accommodation. Now, a uniform stipulates a dupatta. Now, how you wear that dupatta, whether you use the dupatta only to cover your chest or whether you use it to cover your head as well, why should it bother anyone? And how do you interpret school uniforms? That you shall wear the uniform alone and thou shalt not add or detract to it? Now, during the pandemic, everybody had to wear masks. Are masks part of the prescribed uniform? If you go by that logic for everything, you will then have to give out regulations, orders, and it's a never-ending process. Laws are meant to be interpreted reasonably in reasonable circumstances. And if somebody has a genuine reason, whether it be religious, whether it be medical, whether it be anything else, you find a way to reasonably accommodate requests which do not impinge on anybody else. If a girl were to, for whatever reasons, whether out of modesty, whether out of religious diktat, or whether out of her own sense of self-preservation, if she were to choose to wear her uniform or her apparel in a manner consistent with her requirements, does the state get to interfere? And can the state say, if you do not conform to my ideas of what the uniform means, you will not be allowed to come into class whatsoever? That, I certainly think, is not the intent of the law.
Right. But, you know, there has always been this prescription, really, by educational institutions, and particularly the school level, not so much, of course, at the college level, where I remember when we were kids and going to a convent school in Delhi, which is a good school, we enjoyed it, loved it, but your skirt had to be so many inches above the knee. and you were wrapped if it was 1 inch less or 1 inch more or whatever it was. So, and that was taken as a sign of good schooling, in the sense that the school is inculcating discipline in you, you have to follow certain norms, etc. So if you take that logic, which some people are offering now, and you can see it on the social media, but said very rudely and nastily, but if you take that forward, then that would appear, that would justify the reaction to a piece of clothing like the hijab.
Let me put it this way. At the school level, it's a different thing. Here, this particular issue arose out of the pre-university, that's post-school, in the 11th, 12th, and in colleges. In my time, after the 10th, we wore no uniform. Uniforms came in at the collegiate level, came in by a later prescription. Now, even your Catholic school that you give an example of, or my Catholic school, which I went to, yes, we had a uniform. It was prescribed. But now, if somebody for any particular reason added to that, I don't think the good fathers or the good mothers would knock us out of school altogether. The hijab, for instance, may not have been particularly followed at an earlier point of time. But right now, a lot of people tend to follow it. With affluence also comes change, a certain change in lifestyle. People tend to get more religious. Now, if they believe in good conscience that this is how they should dress at all points of time, then it can't be in the name of the uniform that it can be that article can be of clothing can be prescribed altogether. Because if you take the logic that the uniform is for the school authorities alone to provide and no other, then what prevents the government of the day ordering all schools to wear only knickers of a particular cut and fashion and say that will be the deemed uniform for everyone, no exceptions?
Right.
That can't be. Right. That is grossly disproportionate. And what is to be the consequence of somebody who cannot, for whatever reasons of conscience, fully adhere to the uniform code? Can you keep the person away from education which is state funded? I think not.
Right. Now, there is a side play, which I don't think is really a side play if you look at the society and the politics of it, but legally perhaps it's a side play. That of the right, you have the majoritarian right, which is, of course, saying that, or creating this bogey and blurring the distinction. In fact, both the rights, the minority and the majority, are blurring the distinction, very deliberately so, I feel, between the hijab and the burqa. And in people's minds, the hijab is taken on the form of the burqa. The reasons are different. The majority right is bringing it in because it wants to raise the bogey of, that full clad Islamic burqa. And the minority right is bringing it in to use the hijab controversy to legitimize the burqa. So do you feel that, unnecessarily the courts have been dragged into what is really a completely communal issue, which is creating problems for the women?
Yes, the fight over the hijab is symbolic. It shocked me when somebody said, roughly in Kannada, the Hindi equivalent is utar ke rahenge. It's a question of dominance. So all kinds of other logic is given. Forget the burqa, forget everything else. The same arguments can then apply to extra loud lipstick. The same arguments can be used against tight jeans.
They already were actually at one level.
Yes. Now, where do you stop? Ultimately, when it comes to women and their agency in what they choose to wear or not wear, do you need to have an orthodox code, a code of orthodoxy from either the priests on one side or the educationists on the other? Even if there are codes, the interpretation ultimately has to be left in good conscience to the people who are subject to it.
Right.
Let me just turn this argument around a bit. You know, if a woman does not wear the hijab, could she be thrown out of the Islamic faith? Maybe not. But now, if a woman wears the hijab, you're going to throw her out of school? Is that where you are taking your education to? I think
Right.
that's a bit too far.
And it's also the hijab is become now, earlier I remember when we were in college, a lot of girls would come wearing the burqa, not the hijab at that time, but a full burqa coming to college, then they would take it off. Because that is how conservative families, whether they're Hindu or Muslim or whatever, do try to shelter their women and don't allow them to either study or such compromise. The women now, and Muslim women who were not being educated to that extent before, now are wearing the hijab and coming out. And that is maybe their key and their password to good education, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And many people do not realize how hard it has been to get education to women.
Exactly.
You see, education is for women is the first casualty when the family is in straitened circumstances. Therefore, education in government colleges, if you put in restrictions, which then make the girl or her parents face a difficult choice between abandoning what they think is their religious compulsion and forsaking education altogether, they might end up forsaking education. Do you remember that film Chariots of Fire?
Yes, of course.
Where, so there you had Eric Liddell who refused to run on a Sunday for an Olympic medal. And that was a choice that he made. Now, why are you forcing women to have, if not a Sophie's choice, a Sufia's choice?
Yes.
That it has to be either the hijab or education. Why not both?
And initially, when this happened, this controversy, and they were stopped from going into the examinations center, the slogan then was, education is our right. Unfortunately, because of the play of all politics, it has become on all sides, a hijab is our right. Whereas hijab is to do with the identity and education is really to do with your rights. And both are linked, of course, in this case, right?
Absolutely. And you see, if the family says that you can go out only if you conform to religious requirements all the time, then at the gate of the classroom, if she has to lie to her family, lie to her faith for the class, do you think she can be forced to make that choice? It's an unnecessary burden that you have placed. And it will have the effect of keeping away a lot of women from being educated. I was speaking earlier about how difficult it was for women to get educated. From my mother passed away recently. She told me that in 1952, when near Manipal, her father was a schoolmaster, they could afford education till the secondary stage. There was a college nearby, but it was not co-ed. And to make it co-ed, there were several requirements. So they had to approached the Madras High Court, which by a judgment allowed them to allowed that institution to become co-ed. Both my father and my mother went to that college, MGM College, outside which some of these hijab protests have happened.
Oh,
so when I see that, when I see how this generation does not know the difficulties with which women have fought for education, it makes me very sad.
Exactly. Just a few decades ago, I mean, when we started out in the profession, all the women's groups were fighting for this right for education. And women, if you went into the villages, wanted to be educated, but were not even allowed because the colleges were very far and because there was no transport to go, or they were totally co-educational, or boys' colleges and no girls' colleges where people felt confident about sending them. So there's actually been, say, in 30 years or so, there's been some kind of a revolution where young girls are just coming out in the droves. And this kind of thing, do you think that there is some design, or are people wrong in seeing a conspiracy to stop women from being educated? And I'm not saying Muslim women deliberately, because whatever happens to women happens to all of them eventually.
Yes. I don't think there is a deliberate conspiracy. But now that this has started, I don't think that the powers that be are displeased with the effect.
Right.
The more educated a person is, man or woman, the more they will question. What they want is unquestioning obedience.
Right.
An education which makes people question. And this was exactly what happened. These were young girls who had a particular chemistry teacher. This is how the incident unfolded in Udupi. There was a chemistry teacher, a lady, who said, you will have to take it off. And the last year also, I forced other students to take it off. And then they went and complained to the principal. The principal did not hear them out, did not hear their parents out. Then the matter went to the district education officer, who said, no, who told the principal, no, let these girls study. The principal then went to what was called the College Development Committee. Who heads the College Development Committee? The local MLA. Forget the party. Now, if you get politicians to run government colleges, do you expect that they will keep their politics outside, or they will cease to find opportunities for political gain in these colleges? Is it what we want? There, I think even the Karnataka High Court has made certain observations there.
Yes. Amazing. Amazing. The last question was a short interview, and I know you're very busy. The last question is about, we've touched on it earlier and you spoke about it, but I want you to elaborate a little more, of compassion and law. To what extent does compassion play a role in, or should play a role, let's put it like that, in judgments and rulings? How important is that factor?
Well, compassion per se is I don't want compassionate judges who then, because rights become a matter of compassion, rights become a matter of condescension. I want to see judges who will stand up, in Justice Krishna Iyer's words, for the last, the least, and the lost.
Right.
Somehow or the other, we have, over the past few decades, we've had all men and women like us. And empathy for those who happen to fall outside the pale of a particular middle class mindset, that sometimes is lacking.
It's something, I think maybe it applies that much to good lawyers as it does to good journalists, is that you look for reaching the voices of the poorest of the poor to the corridors of power, is what we were told by editors when we were journalists coming up in the profession. And what you've said is almost the same thing, that outside the pale of the middle class mindset, you're actually looking at people for whom the court is an extremely important institution to bring justice and allow them to live, right?
Absolutely. And and the great thing about Indian democracy is that people do look up to the courts,
Yes.
and courts do try to reach out. Sometimes there is a synapse, there is a little break, a little disjunction. I hope it doesn't last very long.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you,
to
Seema.
discuss this.
It was a pleasure having you.
So as we spoke to Mr. Sanjay Hegde, the Supreme Court is poised to hear the hijab case, as it has come to be called, most probably after the holy vacations. And also the urgency that it has shown, or will be showing hopefully, is because the young girls who were stopped from entering an educational institution are to appear for examinations. And it is very necessary for the court to intervene so that they do not lose a year in their education. Women's education has been a long fight. It's been a long struggle waged by individuals, by activists, by women's groups over the years. It has been literally in the past 15, 20 years that you've seen the women sort of break through the walls, the patriarchal walls, and actually move out to study. This applies to all women, but also to Muslim women who come from very conservative families. And hijab has become, which is just a headscarf, one is not even talking about the full gear, has become a sort of a passport for them to enter educational institutions, a passport with their families, with conservative society, which then does not frown at them moving out of their homes to study, and then to work, and then to be educated mothers. So it is an extremely important issue, all to do with women's future. Unfortunately, it has been dragged into politics of the worst kind. And it is something now that we hope the courts will intervene and allow the women to break free. Thank you so much.